My modular has two voices for the most part. One is based on Mangrove, one is based on the Make Noise DPO. And it's designed to do two things well. One is to, by itself, when it's played without a sampler or Ableton, to be able to make sort of beatless, just like a two-voiced, to be really nice to play in your lap with no drums, just to noodle around on. And the other is when it's paired with Ableton or my Octatrack, is to be the synth voices of an improvised sort of dancey techno setup. The patch is pretty similar for either one of those. I'm going to go over the patch I'm using right now for how I would play it on my lap, except it's on my desk right now. I'm just going to go over it from the very start. I have all my right angle cables here, which I tend to use first. I'm going to take my clock out of Pam's here. I'd usually take two. One of them goes to marbles. The other goes to, here we go, goes to Metropolis. These are currently running at the same rate, but I want to be able to change them each individually. That's why I'm not just splitting it passively. In this patch, I'm going to sequence DPO from Metropolis, but I'm going to go through stages and I'll explain why in a second. So I'm using the orange segments on stages, which are step segments. I'm taking the pitch out of Metropolis and it's going to control the level of a single stage on stages. So it's not doing anything right now. It's just going to pass it directly through. Taking the output of that stage into the 1 volt per octave of oscillator B on DPO. DPO's final output goes into the left side of blades. Left side of blades goes into the first input on Veils, which is my mixer in this patch. The output, I'm using the second one so I can mix another signal in. That will be my second voice. The output of that is going to go into beads. And the two outputs of beads are going to go into EXO here, which is my output module. Just feeding them around, trying to be neat here, though it's going to be spaghetti any moment. Now we should be able to hear this if we turn up this, turn up this. Hoo-hoo. The first interesting thing I wanted to talk about this patch. Ooh. Why did that happen? The first interesting thing I wanted to talk about here is gain staging in this patch. Both of my oscillators have inbuilt VCAs. On Mangrove, it's the air control, which is a driven VCA. And on the DPO, it's the fold control, which is a different flavor of driven VCA. So it can go from totally silent up through sort of normal tones into these crazy folded tones. The second VCA in each of my voices is the drive control on blades, which has a different sort of character. So if I turn this up a little bit, the drive control here is a normal level control for the start. And then it will just soft clip. Crossfade between that circuit and a different wave folder. That sounds totally different. And then once we're done with that, I have a clean level control over here. I'll turn that to exponential. For this reason, I'm going to control my level with the clean one, and so that I can combine the two characterful level controls and get the tone that I want, and then use the clean level control to control the actual level. For this reason, I'm putting the filter before the VCA, You can do it either way. This is the way I prefer in this particular patch. Let's get a little sequence going here. So I'm going to turn these things up. I'm using the cleaner setting on blades here. The filter is all the way up. I'm just going to, I have a 3-step sequence on Metropolis. I'm going to put 2 stages on each, just to keep it a little slower. That seems good. So let's get an envelope in there. Metropolis uses a actual gate out. It's very good at sequencing gate length and things like that. So I don't want to use just a normal AD function from maths. What I'm going to do is use the input on maths. I'm actually going to use the other channel just so it's easier on my brain. Here we go. So in channel 1, this is the second interesting thing that happens here, is that if I just plug this directly into the input, into the FM input on blades, you might notice that it doesn't open it all the way. There's a lot more to open. This is fully open. This is attenuator's fully up, but it doesn't open the filter all the way. And I want it to open the filter all the way. This is because the gate that comes out of Metropolis is a 5-volt gate, and Blades needs an 8 to 10 volt envelope in order to open it all the way. So, sorry about the dog, that's my neighbor. I'm going to run this through another channel of veils in order to amplify it. So I'm just plugging it into input 3 there, turning this all the way down. This will now go into the FM of channel 1 of Blades. Turning this up. Let's get a little bit. Now, if we turn this up more, you can hear that it opens Blades all the way. And now I'm going to use this attenuator as sort of a control, a performance control. Turn a little reverb on beats. Gonna bring in another stage on Metropolis. Bring in a high one. Now I'm going to take the other output of the envelope that we have. This is the unity output from maths, and plug it into the level control of our oscillator on veils. This way we can detach the amplitude from the timbre, which is another thing I want to do. So you have the filter all the way open. Now we have the envelope. Affecting the amplitude without affecting the timbre. I don't tend to use actual cutoff controls on my filters. I actually like to modulate by hand or via CV the index amount. So this is like the attenuator. If I want a more open filter, I'll just increase the release time and leave it and leave the attenuator all the way up. That's just the way I prefer to do it. Let's get a different sound here. So this is one voice. I'm not using marbles for anything. I'm not using stages for anything. We'll get there in a second. Currently, let's talk about stages for a moment. Currently, if you remember, our pitch CV that's coming out of Metropolis is going through a stage of stages. We can transpose it if we want. But we can also slew it, because when you use the orange steps on stages, the pot becomes a slew control. That sounds pretty cool, but I'm actually going to use this loop control over here and turn a slide on just this one step. turning up the resonance on blades. So now I want to turn down the fold parameter, which is going to change the timbre of the sound in addition to the amplitude. That's about right, but now I want it to be louder, so I'm going to turn up the drive on blades. That sounds good. Now I want to talk about the first interesting sequencing trick that I have here. So since we're running this through stages, what we're actually going to be able to do is switch between two different stages. Can be a sequencer or a sequential switch. The difference between those is that a sequential switch switches between different CV sources, and a sequencer switches between different fixed CV values. It can do both because as a sequencer, each stage can be controlled by its time/level input. So what we're going to do is switch between the root note and the sequence rhythmically. So I'm going to take another clock output here. I'm going to take, number 6 here. This is currently divided or multiplied by 4. I'm just going to bring it by 1. Actually, let's do it divided by 2. Since this is an odd number, if we just divide it by 4, it's going to be uneven, which is what I want here. So let's take this output right here, and we're going to bring it all the way around here into the gate input on stages. Let's actually swap these over to the next stage, which is set up exactly the same way at the moment. And we're going to bring this into the gate input. Now, sequence, bass note. I think this is really cool. If we want, we can bring up this note. That's just up an octave. This is very hard to tune by hand because the range of these sliders is so high. It's like 5 volts, I think, which is 5 entire octaves. So tuning in an actual note is quite difficult. You might want to use a quantizer if you want to play with that live. Let's bring in some echoes here on blades, or on beads. Octave up, turn up the density. That sounds crazy. Randomize the time. Just a very low mix. That might be nice. Let's turn it off for now, but save that for later. Let's hook up my second voice. I'm going to do a very similar patch here. I'm going to take the formant output of I keep getting confused by my silly labels. The formant output of Mangrove into the input of channel 2 of blades. I'm going to take this other envelope here, output 4 of maths into CV input. This time I'm not going to use the gate in, I'm going to use the trigger in. Maths output's an 8-volt envelope, which means that it will open this all the way without the need for the VCA. Now I'm going to take the output of channel 2 here into the input of channel 2 of Veils. Just turn this down for now. Now we need our envelope to be triggered somehow. I'm going to trigger the envelope let's just say every 5 times. It looks like it's already set up to do that. So let's take the 5 clock division out on Pamela's new workout into the trigger input here and turn up the envelope. I'm not hearing anything. Let's turn up the air control on Mangrove, which will give us volume. You can see this coming up here. Turn up the filter, turn up the amplitude on Veils. We have a Mangrove sound. So this is the same thing as DPO, wherein we have 3 different level controls. We have one over here that sounds like this. It's got its own sound. You can hear it kind of goes through this sharper point. There's more high harmonic fluff there, and then it'll round out. And then it'll get different harmonics as we turn it up more. So you're right there. It's nice and smooth. We can try the drive control on blades. Sounds a little different. Or the folded control, which sounds totally different. I'm gonna use, again, the clean one. Blend in a very tiny amount of the folded one for a little bit of buzz. That's good. That'll give something for the filter to chew on. That sounds really good. So, there we go. We can hear it triggering, actually. I'm going to take the... Give me the right size cable. This is the problem with having all your cables the same color. I'm going to take the unity output again into the level control of channel 2. Bring it to exponential. That means, again, if we have the frequency open, we can still have level control. Let's turn this down and we can adjust. This is the channel 4 attenuverter on Maths. Great. So now let's bring in our other voice here. Slightly sharp. That's what I want. I'm going to bring up the BPM a little bit here from 75 to 90. Here's where things are going to get a little tricky. I'm going to switch things around a little bit. I'm going to take this stack cable. I'm going to take the pitch output of Metropolis, instead of sending it directly to that channel of stages that we were using, I'm going to send it both to that channel. Oops. What was I doing here? Oh my god. There we go. Yes, to that to that channel, and then also to the next one. This is going to act as a sample and hold if we put a gate into there. When you have an orange segment and a level control, either from the slider or from the CV input, the gate input acts as a sample and hold for that value. It will only sample a new value when a gate goes high. So I'm also going to mult this here gate that's triggering my Mangrove voice, which we hear right now. That gate, let's take this cable out. This is coming from the clock divided thing here. Gonna take that gate both to trigger our envelope, but also to sample the voltage coming out of Metropolis. So now this output is going to be sampled every once in a while. I'm going to take that CV put it into the pitch input on Mangrove. We're gonna have to retune this. Maybe not. That sounds pretty cool. Let's bring in our other voice. That sounds really good. Bring in some more reverb. Bring in beats. Sounds good. So let's stop this for a moment. I'm just going to turn down our filter attenuators here. Something that you can do with DPO, I don't know if this is just my model because it's quite old or whether this is universal to DPO, but if we listen to DPO here, which one is it? Let's give it a long filter envelope so we can hear this. Turn off beats for a second. With no modulation from the first oscillator here, if we just turn it up to maximum frequency, listen to this. We get this crazy aliasing sound like it's modulating something through an attenuverter. Hear that? It only happens at the very top of this pot. I think that's a great sound. Just a little bit of sparkle on top. I really like that. Great, sounds good. Let's bring in our other oscillator. Let's change around the sequence here. Remember, we're only hearing the Metropolis sequence half the time. The other half the time, it's the fixed value that we set on the stages slider. Let's have it slide up to the fixed stage here. Let's bring this up another octave or so. Every time we change the timing of Metropolis, we're going to change the bass line. You can hear now the times are matching up, so we're actually not getting a changing note on the bass line. So I need to add one more stage somewhere in order to fix that. I'm going to bring in another stage here. And you can hear now that the times are unsynced again, they're phasing. And we're getting different sounds from Mangrove again. Let's turn up the air. Mangrove sounds so good. Sounds good. I'm going to take the noise out of disting, which is in, what mode is it in? Algorithm B1, which is the sample and hold with noise. I'm going to take the noise out. I don't have an actual noise source in here, so I'm just using disting into the air input on Mangrove, which is going to give it quite an interesting sound. I really like this. And solo it so you can hear it. Isn't that great? I think that sounds fantastic, and it really sounds good with resonance on the filter. So right now we have DPO going between this sequence and a fixed note. We can actually get more complicated than that though. What if we wanted that fixed note to change between two notes? Fortunately, Stages has a CV input on every stage, so what we're going to do here is bring the stage down again. So now you can hear this bass note. I'm going to take the CV in. What we're going to do is make another micro sequencer out of these two stages of stages. Gate input. Let's take another channel of Pam's here. Actually, let's use a channel of Marbles. We're going to take, I can go into more detail about this in a future video if you're interested. Everything in this video, just ask any questions in the comments. I'm going to take one of the gate outputs, T1 here, which I have set to a pretty short gate, into the gate input here. So now we have another two-step sequence here running. And this is going to be alternating on its own little schedule here, determined by Marbles. And this alternating sequence between these two values is being sent to the fixed value of our other sequence, right? Okay, let me say that again. We currently have what we set up at the beginning, which is an alternating sequence between the CV it's switching between the CV coming out of Metropolis and a bass note. Bass note. Sequence. Bass note. Sequence. Bass note. Right? And it sounds great. But what if we switched the bass note between two other notes? That's what we're doing here with these. Oops, I'm actually in the wrong. Here we go. So now our fixed note is switching between an octave up and an octave down, which makes an even more interesting sequence here. To my ears, it's quite cool. Let's bring it down to a fifth. Might be a third, I'm not sure. So now I have quite an unpredictable sequence coming out of Metropolis. And again, this is not going to affect our bass line because the bass line is being sampled directly out of the output of Metropolis before it gets switched around. Let's bring back the bass line, which isn't actually really acting as a bass line right now, but this other voice. Down on beats. The feedback's up. Some slew into the bass line. Yeah. Sounds great. There we go. DPO benefits greatly from being very subtle with the timbre controls, I found. Oops, we don't have that one turned on. Let's do this. That's all for now. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and let me know what you'd like to see next from this system. I'm interested to start a series of complex patching.